and appreciate everybody joining. We're going to be talking about Disney World, the first 5 years. I'm just going to start with a little poll here. I just give this a try, so folks can just answer that. It is anonymous. I do not track you down. We do not do massive marketing to you or anything. Just trying to get an idea of the audience.
Larger audience today than usual.
Oh, we got 3 newcomers and 36 or 37 old comers, and okay, that just gives me an idea. So end polling, there's the results. Exciting, huh? Okay, I'd just like to get an idea of the audience bit. I have another one here. Yes, Bill discovered polling. So let's see. How do I get to the next poll? Relaunch polling. Okay, do you want to continue? I know I do not want the same question again. Okay, oh, I see here. Okay, now we'll try this one. Okay, so it was written on a bathroom wall. Actually got a vote. Okay, that's...
What is this? Facebook, yeah.
All right. And let's see, I have one more here. And...
That's the same one.
No, same one. Come on.
It went away so quick, I never got a chance to answer. Oh, there you
This is like the Epcot poll.
It's about as scientifically valid, yes.
But you mean that future choice theater? I really like that.
That was fun.
Yeah, I always love that. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 people. That means I have to make sure I don't tell too many lies or make too many mistakes. So great. Appreciate. Okay, let me just exit polling. And at the end, we'll take one other quick poll about next week's schedule. So let me just go to share my screen. I'm going to put everybody on mute. If you have questions or anything, you can put them in chat and I will not see them. If there's anything urgent, Carol can come running in and tell me. If there's anything super urgent, you can unmute yourself and let me know. And I will go to share screen. We will go to PowerPoint, if I can find it wherever I put it. Oh, there we are. 1 second, up to the beginning. Of course, it did not go to the... Hang on, I want to get up to the beginning of the slide. That's my trouble for looking through something here. Okay. 1 second. You know, more proof. Once again, you get what you pay for. So, okay. So we'll go back here, share screen, PowerPoint. And here we go. Okay, again, appreciate folks joining. Some of us have heard this speech before, but for other newcomers, taping this, if you don't want to be seen, just turn off your camera. I'm going to be going through the first 5 years of the Vacation Kingdom of the World. Going to be trying to look at things that the average guest saw of interest. These are all pictures that basically from my collection. Some I took, some I didn't take, or most I didn't take because I wasn't there for opening day, for example. But we'll go through it. Appreciate everybody's joining today. Mention that these are restored photos, just to give you an example for folks that hadn't seen it before. This is a typical souvenir slide of Small World. Unfortunately, over the years, the dyes shift, the colors change, they get dirt on them and everything. Luckily, with the computer, though, you can do some fun things and bring them back to life and turn the time back. So most of the photos today are restored. There's a few I slugged in there just because I hadn't gotten around to it yet, but hopefully most of them look a little bit more energetic. So we're going to go back to take a look at Disney World. Folks remember that great logo with the mouse ears and the big D on all the merchandise and publications. And we're actually going to start back in 1970 for a real quick view of the preview center. There was a preview center on the highway down into Florida. As you came in through the guest relations areas they had on the side of the road, they would give you out free orange juice and that. But when you got to Disney World itself, the property had a preview center where you could go in and get a view of a model of the property, a film about it, and not so amazingly, you could also buy Disney merchandise, Disney World merchandise. The first stuff was sold out here. So this was a preview center there for basically coming in, getting familiar with the place. They brought all the press in, did tours there. And the building's still there. It's now, I think, a sports union building. When I started, it was a spot where you checked in for all the treehouse villas and other things out there at Lake Buena Vista. But it was a great idea for Disney. Have people come in, start seeing it, take stuff home. You could buy, again, all sorts of Mickey and other merchandise and bring it back. Now, in March 71, I was down in Florida. I had gone down for spring break, and we were staying through coincidence at the home of this very wealthy millionaire in a private island off the coast of Miami. And he said, "Hey, I have a friend who's helping build Disney World. Would you guys like to go over there for a tour?" So I said yes. The other three guys said no. We want to stay on your private island. We want to use your boat, and we want to go drive around and try to impress all the girls we see. My recollection was I got outvoted. In reality, I probably voted with them, so we did not go and see. But if we had gone, this is the sort of thing you would have seen. Again, I haven't had a chance to restore all these, but Disney would take VIPs through the site on a bus. And this is the Swiss Family Treehouse in March of 71, which is kind of astonishing when you look at this to think that opening day is 8 months away, and look how much work they had to do just on this one attraction. If you went through it again, dirt everywhere, if the roads weren't paved, it was just an amazing amount of construction underway. Again, 8 months later, this place is going to be done. The castle is going to be finished. The attractions are going to be done. The flowers are going to be planted. It's just mind-boggling to look at and realize that this is how much still had to be done in that period of time. I just don't know how they were able to pull it all off. But pre-opening, we'll take a look at some of what was needed to get Disney World built. Viewing the model shop, we're looking at the Hall of Presidents, and they're going and getting, I think this is Grover Cleveland, if I remember right, or William Henry Taft, one of them. Anyway, they're getting him ready for his big day in the show. The dolls from Small World are all being kitted out, and folks are getting ready for showtime. For folks that go to the Haunted Mansion, this is Leota Toombs. It's her face that floats in the ball at the seance section. Eleanor Audley did her voice, but if you remember, little Madame Leota, hurry back, that's her voice and her figure doing it. She was an Imagineer that started Disney back in the days before Disney World, worked in the model shop, located down to Florida for a while to get Disney World open, came back out here, and her daughter Kim Irvine is now a WED executive or Imagineering executive, so the family tradition goes. But she's getting Cinderella ready for her big debut, and the Mickey Mouse Review, one of the shows that was unique to Disney World. Most of Disney World had taken things that were at Disneyland and upscaled them and moved them out there, but there were a number of new things like this. And I love this show. It was great. Unfortunately, they took it out and sent it to Tokyo after a number of years. But these figures are still there. People may have seen some YouTube video of the week Disney World just reopened it after the pandemic. And I think it was Jose here just had his onstage collapse. So that's the trouble when you're using 50-year-old figures, and sometimes they take a nap. But a great show. Really enjoyed it. Now, if everybody has their ticket, we'll go and take a look at Disney World itself. I don't know if anybody has any of these left. I've got a few from the early days of Disney. These are little cardboard tickets. And we're going to go take a look at opening day. So for Kathy, who was there, maybe you'll see yourself in the crowd. But the quiet day, as she mentioned, you could actually see empty space on Main Street. a lot of times when you open up things back then, people were so afraid that the crowds were going to be so horrible, so horrific, that I'll just go another day and I'll stay away from it. So opening day actually had a very small crowd, just like the 64 World's Fair and other events do. But they had enough of the crowd along this side of Main Street, Mickey and his giant drum. And we'll just take a couple parade looks as we go through. Disney went all out for this. They got a marching band formed by all sorts of bands from the area. It was 1,076 pieces, so fitting in with the theme of the Music Man. And I can imagine the practice for this must have been interesting. And you think about conducting it, the band at one end of Main Street is going to be playing a totally different thing than the band at the other end of Main Street, because you can't see or hear each other. But it was a massive enterprise. Naval cadets from the air station that was in Orlando, major training base, and we see often many sailors out there celebrating that they had survived boot camp. One of my favorites, always all the parade, the toy soldiers. How many? Of course, how many of you admit as soon as you see these guys, you hear the trumpets blaring in your mind? You know, it makes you. When I see them too, it makes me think of Christmas time is finally here. But more characters coming down the street. It was a big event and well covered in the press. These are all official pictures that came out of Disney. As I mentioned, I was not there that day. But quite a parade. It was quite a staging and quite a lot going on. And then the inevitable balloon release at the end. And that night, Arthur Fiedler came out for the World Symphony Orchestra, had a major concert out in front of the castle. I imagine this was quite an experience. For a guy that had been a lot of places, done a lot of things, this still had to have been a real monumental exercise from getting all these musicians that had generally not played together before and do a major concert out there. So now the park is opened. The world is coming to Disneyland, or Disney World rather. And at first it came slowly. We're back at the preview center. It has now become a place for people to check into the hotels and get off on their way to see the park. You could go out to the parking lot, get on one of your trams. No little gates that we have today to keep people from falling out. It was keep your kids inside and your arms and hands inside and everything. And if you drop anything, let us know. We'll go back. Remember all the speeches we've all heard a million times. But we're going to go off to visit the park. Now, this is interesting. It's Ed McMahon. He's down there for the filming of the TV show with Julie Andrews, the grand opening special. And the newspapers carry the story that Ed was there, and this was on October 10th. And they also carried, he got a certain amount of press. What got the most amount of press was that this is the first day it had rained since Disney World had been open. And it's kind of interesting for all of us that have worked there. You just take rain as a normal thing. Well, I guess it must have been drier than normal, but the papers were all talking about how the rain was not keeping folks away from Disney World. And that had been a big fear a lot of people had. A lot of the naysayers were saying the Florida weather and the high humidity, the rain was going to keep people away. So the newspapers are all happily stating it rained at Disney World and the people still came. But it was light back then. The very first month or so, if you look at Disney memos of the time, there was a lot of worry about where are all the people, how come they're not coming? The streets and everything were pretty empty. I mean, here you can see, for example, the Indian war canoes out there with nobody in them. I assume that they're practicing and getting going, but the park is very quiet for its first month or so of operation. Then it starts picking up. Word starts getting out that the hotel rates are very reasonable. There's lots of rooms available. The weather is not as horrible. And this is a good time of year, of course, to open because you don't have the summer heat and humidity. So people are not going down there and coming back saying, I got parched, it was miserable, don't ever go again. Just a view of one of the early Snow Whites. What's fun is you put some of these pictures up on Facebook, and some of the people that actually worked at the park will say, oh, I knew that person, I knew this one. And there's pictures I have of a different Snow White down in wardrobe getting fitted out. And the woman was like, oh my goodness, I remember the day they took those pictures. I never had a copy of them. Could you please send them to me? And I really get a kick out of being able to reunite people with their memories of their time working there. You had lots of street musicians at the time. Mentioned when we did the Disneyland talk, these guys would dress up as the Keystone Cops. Then they would run back to wardrobe, get another set of clothes, show up as Liberty Street players in another area, run back at another set of clothes. But it really made the park more vibrant. You had a lot more activity going on because, again, they'd be entertaining people. And people just can walk down the street, stop and listen to these little impromptu concerts. The keelboat, mentioned last week how the keelboat had the unfortunate problem that everybody liked to ride up top. Here is proof of that. So now you have all the load up there. When you have the wind and a sharp turn, you have a capsized keelboat, and that's what eventually did them in. But just take a look at the land behind it. Very barren hills, the trees have still not grown in. Again, just like Disneyland, this was all, when this started, flat, nothing. They had to build all these hills, transplant all these trees. Massive amount of work to get this number of trees in place already just within a month of opening time. Again, street music, street performance, big activities that I thought made it really special when I first went there as a guest, that there was always something going on. Now, so we're going to take a visit, go back to the park. We're driving in on the main parking lot. You see some of the topiary figures off there, off to the side. Hey, things are starting to pick up. More people there now. And it's wet, so it's still raining and it's not keeping people away. Matter of fact, they're all lined up to go in. And if you look at the gates today, now you have to have massive fences and security checks and everything else. But back then it was a much more genteel time. People all lined up ready to go in and have a great time when you get in. This is kind of interesting. If you look up at the signboard, the Magic Kingdom does not say the population on the left, and it does not say the elevation on the right. They did not want to start and say population so far, nobody's come. And they didn't change it to say 1,000 have come. They didn't say 1,000,000 have come. It wasn't until quite a few years later, I think it was 1974, that they actually, or 75, that they changed the signage. We'll see when it changes. And it first popped up with 25 million. But it's Christmas time, the first Christmas at Disney World, back at the time when they used real Christmas trees and it smelled real nice walking by them. All the Christmas decorations are out and the crowds are coming. But parts of the park are still just simply not done. The side streets were, in later years, we'll see what they put in here. These were just empty streets. Classic Winnie the Pooh, the Winnie the Pooh costume that I always remember, this particular design. But some parts, again, just not done. We're standing, or actually, I think we're riding the train right now, looking past where Big Thunder will be someday. There's nothing out here at all. And you can see the sidewalk shows there's nothing out here and no reason for people to come out and look at nothing. The Indian Village is interesting because there are no Indians in the Indian Village. Absolutely empty for the first couple months. The teepees are up, but there were no figures. Matter of fact, if you look at some of the pictures closer, you can see electrical junction boxes sticking out of the ground where the figures are going to be plugged in and powered, and lights going to be added for nighttime viewing. But the Indian Village was barren. There was nothing out there. Just all the Indians must have been on vacation at Disney World that particular day. Again, they had so much work to get done. What they got done for opening day is truly impressive. And things like this, as I talked to one of the people who had worked on building it, they said you only had so much time, so much money, and some things could just wait. And we concentrated on what we needed to concentrate on, and things like the Indians in the village, they could come later. Looking back at the contemporary, you see Crane. That's because there was still a massive amount of work being done on the hotel and its the side wings to it. As one person mentioned, for opening day, they took all the cranes down, so none of the TV cameras got pictures of the work still being in progress. And the next day, they all came back up. They didn't want people to think, oh, it's not ready. I'm not going to go yet. I'll wait till it's finished. So they went to the time and effort to make sure that all the cranes were lowered and out of sight for the TV shows for opening day. And we got our first view of the submarine, the mighty Nautilus, going out to explore. This is, again, one of my favorite attractions, having been on the real submarines. We always got a kick of going on the Disney ones and wishing we had windows on ours. But again, great, fantastic ride. I think the styling of the Nautilus just added so much to a ride. The Disneyland one done like the atomic subs is really interesting. But seeing the Nautilus, I think, just really tied it into the whole Disney theming of the earlier movie, and it just gave it a whole special look. Now, this is kind of interesting. Again, things that are not done. I don't know if anybody can spot anything interesting in this one, but I'll give you a hint. Dumbo is not wearing a hat. If you look off to the left, there's some of the Dumbos have hats. Some of them do not. There's no Timothy in the center of the silver ball in the center. There were just things that were not ready and done, and you open it up and you come back and you get to those later. The Grand Prix Raceway, I got a real kick out of this. The styling with the flames on the car, very much of its time with the flame and the artwork on there. Another thing that's sadly gone these days, the Skyway, the bucket. This is the Tomorrowland station. Off to the left, you see a construction fence, because there was still an awful lot of work still going on all over the place to get the park done. In the back to the left, behind the train and just under the Skyway bucket, you can see all sorts of trucks and trailers and everything, because they still had temporary construction sites strewn around the property trying to get the rest of it done and open on time. This is just a little bit of fun with Photoshop. If you have a picture, you say, you buy on eBay, you say it's a great picture, but I have no idea who that woman is, and she's in the way. Well, we'll just make her go away. We'll send her someplace else. Haunted Mansion, very lonely up in the hill. There's no sunshade out in front. Again, luckily not too hot yet, but they learned over time that people standing in line are starting to bake. We're going to have to do something, and we'll see that change. The teacups, no roof on them. Outdoor, again, people are going to bake. We're going to have to fix that as the park moves on. The Castle Forecourt, the Disneyland band, I keep saying Disneyland, sorry, the Disney World band giving a performance. So this whole center court area has greatly changed. The Contemporary, again, now we've got multiple cranes going on, more work looking back over there. But you could go up on the roof back then. You can't do that these days for safety reasons, but back then you could go up on the roof, get some great views. Looking straight across, there's no Grand Floridian Resort today. Total different change. No Space Mountain over to the right. Mickey was out giving parades, and in the early days, he always carried this mace, which is kind of interesting because we were trying to figure out online when exactly did he drop his ceremonial mace leading the parade. And nobody was quite sure, but the archives assured me that they do have the mace in their possession. And it's just one of those things that was done for a period of time, and for whatever reason, they don't do it. But he looked very ceremonial, waving it up and down like a marching band. So we're hopping up to 1972, more street musicians. Again, these guys would be great. Do their performances, run to another part of the park, do another one. You had all sorts of musicians doing performances. And sadly today, for costs they've been cut, and also because of crowds they've been cut, it just isn't the space for them to do it. And the last thing you want to do today with the crowds that we get is to jam up traffic any more than it is. The first year of Mr. and Mr. Easter Bunny coming out and joining us. It was also a big year for Pooh for President, and Disney was very smart. They made a big thing about this. They did Pooh sent him out to actual towns across the country for whistle stops. Here he's at the Disneyland station and getting ready. He's going to be running for president. They did other things that back then kind of surprised you. The characters, for anybody that's ever worn a character costume, you know how big and heavy they are. The thought of going out and water skiing out in the lake is pretty terrifying. But they would actually do these shows out there. You can see the guests all lined up. I understand from somebody that was involved with this, these are employee families that are out there watching, getting a preview of the show. And again, some of our lovely Disney princesses. I always enjoyed this particular picture. Again, this is one of the Disney photographers took, but a very pensive view looking out from King Stephen's Banquet Hall. Now, of course, the princesses all look gorgeous, and you have to say to yourself, ladies, how would you not look gorgeous if you had this many people working on your outfits for you? So we're down in the basements and the utilidors down in the central wardrobe area, and just a view of some of the people, the unseen people that are down there slaving away, getting the place ready to go. Costumes of every size, every shape, every description. Just a massive amount of work. If you want to go sell popcorn, you could get your yellow outfits. They were just, the first time I walked in there, I was absolutely blown away by how large this was. Just on the other side of the wall here is the lagoon for the 20,000 Leagues ride, which they found out the hard way leaked like a sieve into the central wardrobe area. And that was a constant problem for the folks working down there. Lots of fans, dehumidifiers, but that one side of the room was always very, very wet. But again, just a massive operation. For anybody that's ever been lucky enough to go down and see this behind the scenes stuff, if you ever get a chance to go down and take one of the behind the scenes tours, very well recommended. You had big celebrities coming in for golf back when it was still the golf resort. Now it's shades of green, but Jack Nicklaus dropped by. This was kind of interesting. I posted this picture on Facebook, and it just proves to you how amazing some people are with their knowledge of things. Some people started, oh, that's a so-and-such model car, and oh no, the trim wasn't on that one. The wood siding came on this one. But other people were going, oh, that's the Osceola loop, and I think that's campsite number so-and-such, and a whole bunch of people just getting a kick out of taking a look at Fort Wilderness. And again, now the cranes are done. The Contemporary is finished and open. But I had two pictures here. This is, again, the Contemporary a year after it opened, which I think is just a classic-looking hotel. And here's what they've done to it today. This is a 2014 view. And I just still, I can't imagine, with all the room of Disney World being 27 square miles, that they couldn't have found another spot to stick that stinking hotel to the left. I mean, look at how majestic and pristine this thing is when they built it, with the original designers putting the time and effort into it. If they needed to, they could have built a second Contemporary, so it looks like two of the same thing. But that building on the left just doesn't match at all at right. You can see the convention center off to the front right of the Contemporary, the monstrosity to the left. I can simply not forgive Disney for doing that to one of my favorite hotels in the world. We're inside the Grand Concourse, the fourth floor. Lucite trees. Seems like every time I post a picture of the inside of the Contemporary, you find out just how many people love lucite trees. Looking down at the area, this has all been changed now. I think it's a Mickey-themed dining area. The skylight up here, I may have mentioned as a prior talk, it was kind of interesting. I always get a kick of what people take pictures of, because again, back then you had film. You had to carry the film with you. You had to take it and get it developed. It was costly. It took time. You know, why would somebody take a picture of the skylight of the Contemporary Resort? Well, for the folks that didn't hear this story, and I'll apologize to the ones that have, when I worked down there, we had a very strange report come in one night over the radio about a possible drowning fourth floor of the Contemporary. And you try to figure out how the hell could somebody possibly drown on the fourth floor of the Contemporary? It's not even like on one of the guest room floors where, God forbid, somebody could drown in a bathtub. I mean, there's nothing on the fourth floor you could drown in. Well, from the day these skylights were built, they leaked like a sieve. I mean, water just came through them like through a screen door. So they finally decided they needed to reglaze them, fix them over, and take care of them. And they put up giant tarps underneath to catch any tools or glass that they may have lost hold of when they were working on it. One night, the workmen went home. They hadn't quite finished up the work they had done, and it started raining. And it rained, and it rained, and it rained. And this tarp that was across it, and you can see it's a pretty good-sized skylight. The tarp filled up with water. Nobody noticed it, and eventually let loose. There was a man about 70 years old walking across the lobby, and all of a sudden this wall of water came down the entire height of the hotel, hit him, and knocked him right off his feet and slammed him into the wall of one of the gift shops there, and really dazed him. And they weren't sure at first, if he was going to be okay. But I always talk about how well prepared Disney was for him. They popped him up, said, we'll take you inside to the men's shop here. You can get a free suit of clothes. All you need to do is sign this waiver saying that you're okay and won't sue. But amazing that somebody could almost drown on the fourth floor of the hotel. The marina out back, I had an office and a cabana out here by the marina for a while. We've got, you can see Discovery Island or Treasure Island at the time out there. And I remember one day sitting at the cabana, and a tremendous lightning storm came in and hit the island and set it on fire. And I had to call the Disney World Fire Department and report the island was on fire. And then they had to go out and all these little boats like you see off to the left with fire extinguishers and try to put it out, because the one thing Disney does not have in its Navy is a fireboat. Okay. All sorts of different boats, though, out on the waters. You had paddle wheelers, you had stern wheelers, you had little launches. I mean, Disney had quite an amazing Navy, and it's fun to be on the Facebook sites for the people that worked on some of these boats who will compare the handling characteristics of each of them, the engines, how they had to work on them, what they loved about this boat, what they hated about that boat. Pooh's back in Main Street. He's campaigning. I think he came in maybe third that year. He wasn't one of the finalists. Disneyland, we talked about how the bicycle built for four was there. They also brought it to Disneyland. It didn't show up very much past the first 1 or 2 years, though. And again, now things are starting to flesh out. One of the formerly empty streets down at the very end has the art festival you can see lit up. And you can go down and get your portrait done by a portrait artist. More street performer. This is a guy named Eddie Yu. He was the town crier. He was also in the Sons of Liberty. He would read the proclamation of the day and announce the son or daughter of liberty. People say he was quite a character. He was an ex-vaudeville actor, and he was very popular with the cast members he worked with at Disney World. Said he had quite a few stories of people he worked with over the years, and people said he was exceedingly entertaining. And we're still looking at the Indians. Well, we're still looking at the Indian village, to be precise. The Indians have yet to arrive. This is the beginning of the year. But happily, in the later of the year, whoa, it's gotten populated. They brought out the Indians. So we've got the peaceful Indian village now is inhabited. We've got the boys and their dog out in the canoe there, and the rest of the Indians in the background. So things are coming along. We're starting to get used to things. Dumbos, all of them are now wearing hats. Timothy is now standing on top of his silver ball, keeping the elephants in flight. And view from the Skyway. This was the only Skyway that I've ever been on that you actually came along, changed direction, and took a 90-degree turn in it. Again, sadly gone from all the Disney parks now, but the Skyway was a great way to cool off on a hot summer day, getting from one side of the park to the other. It was also a great way, even if you were working there, just to get away from the crowds, or if you didn't want to duck down to the tunnels to get around, you could take a Skyway ride. Haunted Mansion now has a sunscreen, which only goes so far. Have you noticed the crowds are starting to pick up? Disney World's been open a year now. And for those people a year ago, those memos at the studio about, what are we doing wrong? How come people aren't coming? The memos right now are, what are we going to do with all the people? We've got to start opening new things because it's getting more crowded than we predicted. And one of the new things that we're opening was Tom Sawyer Island. There's a big sign here about ignore everything that's going on the island, because this here island is haunted, something terrible. So building up expectations, something new going on across the river. And nighttime, the electrical water pageant, which in the later years would be the genesis for people thinking about the electrical light parade, a great little gimmick at night, keep people entertained, these floats going out there. And that brings us into 73. So 73, we're riding again into the park, the topiary elephants. I was so disappointed when I went out there, and I ran out to the elephants to take a picture when I started there, and found out they were all plastic, and they had a sign on them saying, we're wearing our plastic coats so we look good for you. Well, back in this time in 73, they were real, but so many guests had run out and tried to have their picture taken. Just standing there is bad enough, but people would then put their kids up on top of the elephants to get their picture taken. And unfortunately, the great intentions and the very hard work of the gardening department ruined by people going out and doing their selfies. Still no sign on the train station. We still don't know how many people have come to visit. And it's still fairly light this particular time. But again, as we saw in the other pictures, things are starting to build up. Enough people going in that Disney is expanding the park. And yes, they've expanded out to the Main Street flower market now. Just like Disneyland, they're plastic flowers, but they gave a big spice of color to it. I don't think they ever sold them mail order from Walt Disney World. I think by this time, maybe they realized that the craze was dying down a bit. But again, very nice to go and look at, and you could buy these and take them home. You could also go into the barber shop and get a haircut. You get entertained by the banjo player. and I believe this is Pat Terry. He had been a banjo player for years. He and his son both would entertain. Their picture on quite a few of the postcards, the souvenir slides. But kind of interesting that you could actually go on Main Street, get your hair cut. I think you can still do that. But just kind of fun that they had him out there strumming away on his banjo. The art corner, the art gallery is out there. People getting their pastels done. And this year brought us something else new. One of the things that was a great attraction on paper and didn't work out all that well, the swan boats. You could see members of the Pearly Band are just getting off. They had been entertaining people in a swan boat ride around the waterway that goes around the castle. The idea that the swan boats would follow a magnetic wire buried into the canal, and they would steer themselves automatically just by following where the wire was. It was a great idea, and the boats were very scenic, looked great. Some people off here on a tour, but they turned out to be not as reliable as thought. And a lot of times the swan boats were just parked here. It was also a very low capacity guest ride in terms of how long it took for the boat to go around, the number of cast members needed to run the boats, maintain the boats, even just get people on and off the boats. So the swan boats did not last all that long. They were sold off at a Disney auction. A few of them have survived. One guy's got it and takes his swan boat out for a ride. And so a kind of fun Disney collectible. More Pooh and the other characters. This is back when they could run around the park. They didn't need to have staged performance times and ropes and everything keeping people away. And that was part of the fun of going there. If a kid was out walking the park, they might run into their favorite character, and sometimes their favorite character would be marching behind them, aping everything they did. Everybody else would be laughing. The kid wouldn't know why. They turn around, all of a sudden find themselves nose to nose with Pooh or a dwarf. And just some fun out there, buying balloons, costumes that are not in use today. And more construction going on. Space Mountain, as I mentioned earlier, the Disney executives had said we need to expand the park. So one of the things they had been planning early on with Space Mountain, it had always been planned to be part of Disney World, but wasn't available for opening day, both in technology and in money. But now we're getting Space Mountain built, and it's coming along nicely. Another ride that was great, if you had wings, this was a very popular ride because it was very nice inside in the air conditioning. It did not require a ticket. Back if you remember the A to E ticket, this was free. You could go in. Eastern Airlines had free admission. And it was a very entertaining show. Admit it, how many people are hearing in their mind, if you had wings, had wings, had wings. I mean, it was a catchy song. It was a great use of 3D and film technologies combined together, and it was a super ride. I don't know how many times I went on If You Had Wings, but I would kill to go on it again. Absolutely wonderful vanish part of the park. We are now looking at the grand opening for Tom Sawyer Island. So everybody on the land side is watching. They had musicians out there in the draft performing, and after they were done, you could go and visit the mysterious island. You could also see a new riverboat. When the park first opened, you had just one riverboat, which looked very much like Disneyland's Mark Twain. That was the Richard F. Irvine. I'm sorry, that was the Admiral Fowler. This is the Richard Irvine riverboat that was added in 1973. So this one, you could tell the difference. This was a single stack riverboat. And here it's coming around the island. All this Aunt Polly's and everything added out new on the left on the island. And here's the other riverboat, the Admiral Joe Fowler. Joe Fowler was there from opening day, and again, looks very much like the Mark Twain. Unfortunately, the Admiral Fowler went into the dry dock in 1980 to get some much needed rehab, and they did not properly position it in the dry dock. And when they were trying to move it, they managed to crack the boat in half, totally ruining it. It was decided that it was not going to be cost effective to repair the Fowler. It was hauled off, sat on dry land for a while, and finally ripped to pieces and gone. So that left them with just the one riverboat. They never did replace it out on the river. They had thought for a while again about having two boats, just like Disneyland did, but they decided for economic reasons they would get by with the one. So the Richard Irvine kept going. In 1996, it was renamed the Liberty Bell, and but the name lives on. The Irvine and the Fowler are now ferry boats out carrying people across the entrance to Disney World. More and more people coming, so not everybody can ride up top. The keel boats were very popular. The guys that worked in the keel boats were also very proud of the fact that these boats were not on rails. A lot of the people thought like the steamboats they were, but these were not, and they were very proud of the fact that it actually took skills to put these out on the river. I posted this picture on Facebook, and the guy said, "Hey, I think that's me," and we looked, and yeah, it was. And again, I enjoy being able to help people that work there get pictures of themselves from back then. We're inside the Golden Horseshoe, a little bit of what passes for risque for the mouse, the dancing girls. And again, a view of the contemporary back before the trees have been shaped in the front or the convention center has been added. Things, again, still pretty new. We're hopping across to the other big hotel of the time, the Polynesian, and take a look at the little weird round boat off there. That was called a bob around. It was something they thought was going to be a lot of fun. Bob Gurr invention, unfortunately, one of the ones that did not work. But this was a little round boat that you would putter around out on the water, and it was just, again, something different. Off to the top left, you have the aqua larks, the little speedboats that you could rent and run around out on the lakes, and those were great fun. When I worked there, I had great fun because I could get them really, really cheap. But when kids grew up, go out there. It's great fun taking Margot and Neil out on the lake in those little boats. They had a real good time with it. But the bob arounds are a short-lived thing. They were around about 4 years or so and then eventually gone. You could also go on a Chinese junk. This was an actual Chinese junk out of Hong Kong. Disney bought, redid as a party boat. You could take it out. You see these people are looking very festive out there. Unfortunately, it tended to leak like a sieve, and they had a lot of maintenance issues with it. So it wasn't around that much. It's since been sold by Disney Surplus. Somebody has restored it and is still sailing. At the Poly Beach, the whole fleet of sailboats you could get. And something you can't do today, you could go and swim out at the lake. Unfortunately, the water levels have heated up over the years. You have the problem now that flesh-eating or brain-eating amoebas live in the water. And as a result, you can't go swimming out into the lakes anymore. Luckily, you still have the pools you can enjoy, so there's still great fun to be had there, but it's a shame the lakes are no longer available for that. And again, Disney publicity photo here. They had water skiing shows that would entertain people as you were at the lakes. And at night, they would even do, again, I cannot imagine what this would be like being out there. If you take a dump, you had to be a much better water skier than I ever was to be out there and wearing those heads and not worry about getting dumped off your skis. Well, we're popping into 74, one of the ferry boats that carries you back across. Again, when I first went there and walked through the gates, I was astonished at the whole Navy Disney had, that they'd custom built these boats and so many different styles in that. Walking through the middle of Liberty Square. Oh, this is one I got a kick out of. This is the original train station in Frontierland. It seems like Disney loves to build train stations in Frontierland and then move them. They did it at Disneyland. They did it at Disney World. So for some reason, they just can't seem to figure out what size stations they need and where they need them as they expand the parks. I got a kick out of this one. The characters, when you do a character, you're kind of told to keep your physical interaction with the guests to reasonable conditions. Well, Prince... is it Prince John? Is he the evil prince? Anyway, he's climbed right up in this woman's wheelchair. The next one in the sequence is even worse. He's just basically fallen on top of her, and she looks absolutely aghast. But these are the things that you would not do today and stay employed for very long. Well, back at the Golden Horseshoe, when it first opened up, they had brought Wally Bogue out to redo his Pecos Bill act. He had been very popular, and this fellow name is Bev Bergeron. Tough shoes to fill Wally Bogue's shoes at the Golden Horseshoe, but Bev did a great job. Matter of fact, I had only seen him first because I started working at Disney World before I moved to Disneyland. So for him, this was my Pecos Bill at first, and then I had to get used to Wally. So did a great job. He was very, very versatile, and you can see his cheeks are all puffed up, and he's getting ready to spit out his teeth. He was a very talented performer. More work going on. It seemed that at this time of the life cycle of Disney World, everything was still being built, expansion going crazy. So Tomorrowland was a giant construction fence up. We have a boat here for Treasure Island. And where was Treasure Island? What was that? Well, there was this island, which was, again, the one that caught on fire when I was working there. And you could go out there, and there was this wreck of a mysterious ship that you could go and climb all over, get your pictures taken. It was later changed to Discovery Island, became a nature preserve with all the animals out there, and is now still sitting there, but unused. And urban explorers like to sneak out into the island. Disney likes to catch them, take them to court, and have them banned for life from Disney property. So if you're down there and you're tempted to go visit the island, word to the wise, don't. You will likely get caught. Again, the trees are still very new. They're not shaped in the bottle shape that they were done, or the cones of later years, but place is looking pretty good with the flowers. The Poly looked even better. The original lobby of the Polynesian was just wonderful. You had all these giant tropical plants, waterfalls going. Just the sound of the water was a more humid environment in there. It made you feel like you were out in the tropics. You could go out into the back for the luau at night. These guys would have the duty every night of bringing in the ceremonial pig. And you could look at the junk, which again, leaked, didn't get a lot of use, and only lasted a few years. Indian Village is looking much busier. This is a very interesting picture for one reason, and I'm going to issue people a challenge. You can put it in chat at the end of the talk. I'll see if anybody got this right. But if anybody knows why this is a very significant picture, I will give you a free prize at the end of the chat. So look at it, study it, figure it out, and put in the chat what makes this picture unique. Even Carol doesn't know, so she can't tell you. You can't bribe her. And again, the electrical light parade out on the water, not the light parade, the electrical water pageant, getting ready for the bicentennial, much more red, white, and blue. And this takes us up to 75. So now for the first time, the sign, you can't really see it at the size, says 25 million people there within the first 5 years of operation of the park. Actually, the first 4, because this is very early on in 75. So the park has taken off, and it's really going well. The hotel occupancy rate is astonishing. When I started there, the hotels were running around 96% occupied, which is unheard of in the hotel business. And we did not want it any higher because you cannot keep the rooms maintained in the hotel properly up to specifications if you're at 100%. So the hotels were just going like gangbusters, and people were saying, wow, I stayed at the Contemporary Resort. It was $29 a night. I mean, prices you can't believe today, but very, very popular environment. The original entrance into Tomorrowland, these towers were just wonderful. The water just came thundering down. On a hot summer day, it was very nice because the mist would come out across the walkway there, and people would go off and just enjoy themselves getting it out there. Again, things have changed over time. Back then, we had tickets, remember? A through E, as I mentioned. So you could go to a ticket booth and you could buy your tickets for your ride. You got a certain number when you came in. But of course, people ran out because there were so many things to do and see. There was usually a long line for the ticket booths. And again, great extra revenue for Mickey. But some days were quiet. This was a picture I happened to take when I was there, and a very quiet day. The Carousel of Progress there, stolen from Disneyland and moved out. And some days you were very busy, some days you were not. It was just basically spring break, of course, was always insane. Back over to the Rivers, these little girls are here being sworn as Daughters of Liberty. I was always too old rather for this, but I thought, wow, this would be a great thing to do, you know, get your certificate as a son or daughter of liberty. What's interesting though, is if you look at the pictures of most of these kids that are doing it, they are just terrified. I mean, you know, you can imagine you're walking along, all of a sudden somebody comes up, says you want to be in a show, they stick a silly hat on you, and hundreds of people are all staring at you as you're doing this. So I'm sure they were happy when they got done with it, but most of them look very stone-faced and very nervous to be there. And we will not go into American Parade because we've already done that in depth, but this was the beginning of the American Parade experience, the 2-year bicentennial salute for the parks. Hopping over to a different part of the park we haven't seen before. This is over at Lake Buena Vista Village. This is the Pottery Chalet. Totally, absolutely 100% different shopping experience than anything that's out there today. The village was a great area, particularly when the park was closed at night. We were talking before the chat started how the parks would be closing 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. It was hard to believe now when they're open so much. But you could go over to the village. Captain Jack's, a very popular oyster bar, particularly cast members would go over there. It was just a totally different, very quiet, very sophisticated sort of shopping experience. It wasn't a honky-tonk sort of environment. It was a particular area that I really enjoyed going over and spending times in the evening. And that takes us through the first 5 years of Mickey visiting Florida. Just like to leave you with the tribute plaque that's there. Again, just a wonderful thing. Walt dying when they were not sure that they were going to continue the property, that Roy Disney made the decision that they were going to do it. They were going to honor his brother, and they were going to keep the Disney tradition alive. For folks that are new, mentioned down at the bottom, worldsfairphotos.com/Zoom is where I post these schedules for each of these chats. And it also has the link to the videos on YouTube for all of the others. So with that, I will stop sharing. Whoa, people are still there. Great. So let's see. What happened to the subs from 20,000 Leagues? Yeah, as Don mentioned, most are scrapped. They took them apart. They sat on a boneyard for quite a period of time. And then one of them is down at the Disney Keys. They sunk it that you can go snorkeling down to it. But most of them, they just cut up into scrap metal and stuff. So let's see. Did anybody get the picture of what was right? The horse in the Indian Village. The chief and the horse, same as Disneyland? No. Okay. Nobody got it so far. Okay. No, all right. Oh, by the way, I'll unmute folks if people want to chat. Okay. Let's see. No, where is unmute? You can unmute yourself by using the space bar, or there should be an icon in the bottom left. The reason that picture is significant, and I didn't think anybody get it, that actually happens to be the first picture I took at Disney World. So I was down there on vacation, went in and took the picture, and you sort things out and everything, and you realize, that was the first time I was down there. It's the first picture I took, and thousands of pictures later, what did that generate? But good, I don't have to give away any free prizes. That worked out great. So comments, questions, suggestions, and I'll try to go back through some of these comments here.
Bill, this is Kathy G. As I mentioned, I was there on October 1st. It was just, I wanted to be there. It wasn't anything special. It was a Wednesday. Things I remember, as I said, it was very quiet. I didn't see any of the parades that day. I do know they were filming over the next 3 weeks, bits and pieces, like the Julie Andrews thing was a week later. And then it all accumulated into that TV show, like at the end of October. Right, exactly the case. Yeah. It's they'd done all sorts of segments and everything. I mean, they were smart. You don't want to have opening day, your major TV show, like they did for Disneyland, with all the little technical snafus or things that had gone wrong. So get a couple weeks behind you, bring in your big celebrities, your Bob Hopes, your Julie Andrews, whatever. Get these things done. And then you can edit it all together and do it a little bit more professionally. Other things I remember, I was still living in Washington State at the time. I wanted to stay at the Contemporary Hotel. It was not available, so I stayed at the Hilton at the airport. I remember getting a rental car and driving and driving and driving, and there was nothing. There were no, billboards, no signs, no nothing. The airport was small. For those that know Burbank Airport and what that was like back in the 60s and 70s, that's what it was like at Disney World or at Orlando back on October 1st of 71.
Yeah,
yeah.
Orlando Airport was a tiny little thing, which I think one of the buildings, the last time I went by, is still sitting there as a freight handling building. And you think that that freight building used to be the entire terminal. It was insanely small. And
Mhm.
as you mentioned, there, it's for folks that were down there back then, and it's changed so much. I mean, International Drive, it was just an empty road. Now, of course, it's just jammed with things. But even the Disney property, when you first got on it back then, there was a sign, "Welcome to Disney World," and you just kept going and going. There was no, Disney MGM Studios off to one side, or no roads off to Epcot. You just got on the first, road coming off of 4, and you just drove and drove and drove. It was mind-boggling to think how much, the size of that property.
Yeah.
Did you take any pictures, Kathy?
There, I did at the time. I don't know where they are now. Soon after I came back from that, I moved to California. So I lost some of the stuff, right when I was doing the move. But it was an amazing thing. And again, I remember people saying they called it a soft opening. It was a Wednesday. They were testing to see how it would work. And I didn't get there at the beginning of the day. So if that parade happened on that day, on the 1st, not later on, I missed it. I'm sorry to say I missed it, but I'm so glad I did it. I've been back several times since then.
Yeah, it was later in the day. Just looking at talks here, let's see. Greg Abbott points out, yes, I did call it the Golden Horseshoe. It is the Diamond Horseshoe because Disney World's even better. So not just golden, but it's diamond. So people will notice I keep saying Disneyland when I should be saying Disney World. And, it's the trouble. It's the advancing age is getting to me, so yes. Oh, somebody asked about the giant pots at the village. Yes, you did not have to buy the giant pot and take it with you. They would ship things. You could, of course, a lot of people, if you drove down, just, throw it in the back of your car or whatever. But the whole shopping village down there was you could go and get an entire men's suit, 3-piece suit, tailored to you. They had women's dress shops. They had very upscale shopping, and they had the typical little kitschy, shops to buy ears and T-shirts and that. But they sold an awful lot of clothes. Again, as a cast member, when you got it, I think I got a 35% discount. It was great. If I needed to buy shirts or ties, I'd wait till I was down at Disney World, buy them. I could use them for work anyway. So the shopping village, somebody said they'd like to see a whole thing on Lake Buena Vista. If we do the next 5 years coming up, I have a lot of pictures of Lake Buena Vista because I stayed out there a number of times when I was working for the company, stayed at the tree houses and other properties out there. I should call it Walt Disney World. Yes, I should. Tim O'Day is, you can always tell one of the people like Tim O'Day who writes things for Disney, does things for Disney, and he is correct. I should call it Walt Disney World. Just like we should never ever say it's a ride, it's an attraction, but if the mouse wants to pay me, I'll say Walt Disney World. Let's see, it is Walt Disney World, and Tim is 100% correct. When did the general public know Walt was planning when he first looked at the site? Oh, did the general public know what Walt was planning? Well, when they did the TV shows, Walt stands on these at the map and he's talking about it. I'm this tall and this is this high. They knew there was going to be a theme park, but they also thought there was going to be a lot more. The Epcot that was never built, the actual planned city. There was supposed to be an airport. They did build an airport on the site, a stall port, but there was supposed to be a full-size commercial airport. There was an awful lot of talk about what was going to be done, and then you get into what can be done, versus time and budget. So, but I think people had a pretty good idea that the Magic Kingdom was going to be a bigger, better version of Disneyland. And I think most people had a pretty good idea of what Disneyland was from the TV shows and all the publicity it had for, all those years. So, not everything that was planned for Disney World came to be. I mean, there were hotels. There was going to be a Persian hotel. There was going to be 2 other different type of hotels that were never built. I remember one day we were working at, it wasn't the casting building. I was working in one of the buildings, and our secretary's husband was a soil engineer for Disney. And he came walking in one day, totally covered in dirt, been out in the field. And he said, well, Epcot's not going to be where they think it is. And we said, what do you mean? He goes, we've been out driving test pilings out to see how the soil is where they think Epcot's going to be, where it's on all the maps. And they keep going to the ground. We haven't hit anything solid yet. So I said, well, how porous is it? He goes, think of a sponge. And he says, whatever he says, go buy a map of Disney World with its planned Epcot on it, because it's not going to be there. And if you look at the original maps of where Epcot was going to be and where Epcot is, they are not in the same spot. And that area can't be built on because it was just absolutely porous limestone. And, that was the sort of thing where he was really looking forward. He was actually with great relish. I can't wait to go into the next meeting and tell him I'm moving Epcot. So the power he had.
Can you talk a little more about the tunnel systems? I remember that was the biggest thing they talked about when it opened in the news. And I mean, given the leakage things you talked about, I wonder what happened there. And did they use that system for all the parks that they built afterwards?
No, the tunnel system, they call them utilidors, utility corridors. Great tunnel. As a matter of fact, I had some pictures I should have thrown in, but I think they were actually from the next 5 years. So I was being pure and didn't put them in. If you go to Florida and you dig a hole in the ground, it will fill up with water. And that was one of the things they instantly realized, was that all the basements facilities were going to be filled up with water, and they didn't want that. They also didn't like at Disneyland that anything you want to service, you had to do through the middle of the park. You didn't have the ability to just take things from here to there. You had people see it, or the road around all the way, to move things. So if you had tunnels that would get you around the park, that would be really great. So when you're actually at Walt Disney World, you're one story above ground level. So there's a ramp as you go in. You're up a small ramp to go into the park. And by the time you get to the train station, you're a foot off a floor rather off the ground. So you have the utilidors down there, and there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, the shops, like wardrobes down there where they fix all the radios. I mean, all sorts of things down there. And giant, the evac system, it's a giant vacuum system where, again, you'd open up a hatch in Tomorrowland, pour garbage into it, and down in the tunnels, you can hear all the garbage rattling through the pipes. It's going out to the central collection spot. So for a long time, Disney just kind of pretended those didn't exist. The guests were not allowed down there, totally off limits. Now you can take a tour and go down there, and it's a very interesting thing. I mean, you get down there, it's sort of like being in a subway. Where are you? And everything just looks the same. So they had different colors that different lands would have different colors and stripes. You are here, Fantasyland this way, Tomorrowland that way. Well, it turned out that the utilidors are very expensive to build. They are very great for the Magic Kingdom, but there is not a utilidor type system under Epcot. Epcot is serviced by exterior roads and that sort of thing. It was just very expensive to build, and as a result, they didn't continue that out there. It also became sort of a limiting factor, because now you have the problems if you want to go and start expanding things like Big Thunder. It's off the size of the existing utilidor system. So now you've got to start expanding the system and put it out there. Most of it, I'd say, did not leak because, again, it's above ground. The leak into the 20,000 Leagues Lagoon was a particularly bad area because that was a common wall between the two of them. So you had all that massive amount of water, and then you had the people on the other side. So they may have had some problems with water coming up from the ground, none that I was ever particularly aware of. But the wall into the 20K lagoon was a constant challenge. Matter of fact, I remember when I took one of my first trips down there, after I started, I got hired on in Florida. They moved me out to California, and then I had to go back to Disney World one time in winter. And I went from here to New York, went skiing, and I left all my heavy coats up in New York, said I'll be back up in 2 weeks, go skiing again. Got down to Florida, and it was really, really cold. Got off the plane, it was 34 degrees. And all the citrus trees they had smudge pots out for all that. And I had no idea I could ever get that cold in Florida because I had only been there, every time I had been there was spring and summer. And I went down to wardrobe to borrow a coat, and they said, oh yeah, we'll give you a pea coat from the ones that they were out on the ferry boats. The trouble was it had a Disney World logo on it, and you're not allowed to take it off of property. So they said, well, if you go out, just like, bend the lapel over. But I remember down there being in the basement and saying, why is that wall leaking? And the woman said, oh, that's the submarine thing. And I said, well, God, what if it ever gives way? And the woman says, you find out then if you can swim. And I just always remember being down there, looking at that wall and the water leaking through it, going into wardrobe, getting anything I needed from wardrobe, and getting back out of wardrobe really quick. Now, the office we had down in the tunnel wasn't that very far from wardrobe. Somehow, if it flooded wardrobe, we were probably done with it. But at least my office down there was dry, and I didn't have to look at the water constantly. I don't know how those people did it. I mean, if you're there constantly looking at that water dripping, knowing what's on the other side of it, it would be not something I'd like. Yes, Debbie Del Mar used to walk that short Epcot Utilidor to work every day, occurring construction to the Communicore. Yeah, there's a small one over at basement at Epcot, but not the entire. There, correct me unless I've missed something, Debbie. There isn't like a tunnel that runs from Spaceship Earth all the way around to American Adventure, right? You're muted.
There we go, unmute. I was just responding to Michael Crawford. He had said that there's a little utilidor at Epcot, but no, there was no really expansive one. But the one that used to run near, the one that I used to take to go to Communicore underneath that area, that was really cool. But the coolest one is the one in the Magic Kingdom, of course.
Well, when when we were coming up with the designs for Epcot and everything, I was thinking the Utilidor, that would be a great thing. But one of the things I said, why don't we put in a subway system that goes all the way around Epcot? And because it's going to be so big that people getting back to the American Adventure at night, how are they going to get back on their way out? And there's no people mover or anything that goes out there. So I thought, why don't this be great that you could have, like, in England, you could have something that looks like a tube station. At France, you could look like a metro station or whatever. And people said, oh, yeah, that's really great. Look how much that is. No subway, and I just thought it'd be great. Use the people mover technology, the electric vehicles, but have themed stops to go around. And that there was talk at one time about doing utilidors, and it was just too much. But I still remember saying, what are you going to do to get the 80-year-old people out? And I can remember being in this meeting and people saying, no problem, they'll just walk out. And a friend of mine, Mike Vaughn, who worked at Disneyland, talked about a week after Epcot opened, he came to Disneyland and all the Main Street vehicles were gone. All the omnibuses and everything was gone. And the people that were working on them were like, what am I supposed to drive today? Where'd the buses go? They were on a truck on their way to Florida because they had realized we have to find some way to get those 80-year-old women at closing time from American Adventure. So it was too bad that we never did come up with a real people mover system. But again, money's limited, and back then we were lucky to get Epcot opened like it did without Bill bankrupting them.
Hey,
They run one friendship boat too, so.
Yep.
There was one story about the AVAC system that you talked about, because my office used to be down in DAC Central, so down in the Utilidor at Magic Kingdom when I was business tripping out there. And I was fascinated with the AVAC system, the fact that you just put the trash in one location and there was this big giant pipe that ran under the Utilidor. You hear the trash rattling through. And I think it ended up behind Splash Mountain, because I think that's where their garbage truck area up above was. Not too sure about that, but I remember seeing that. Someone told me the story that some employee was fascinated with the AVACs as well, wondered how heavy the trash could be that it would suck up. So they brought in a used bowling ball. They dropped it down the AVACs and it did rattled something nasty all the way down, came to a right-hand turn and blew right through the piping.
Oh.
So we know it can take a bowling ball.
You can only
Can you
take it
imagine
so
somebody
far.
fell into that thing? What if somebody fell into it?
There were
that big.
Yeah, luckily, it wasn't people size, but yeah, there was always talk about, I have a supervisor I hate. I think he needs a ride in AVAX, But yeah, it was
Hey,
a
Bill, but
Swedish.
beside the utility tunnels, aren't the rides themselves actually below grade? Like most I know, the Haunted Mansion, you seem to drop down, and Pirates of the Caribbean, you seem to go down.
No, it's actually done differently. In Disneyland, you go into the Haunted Mansion and you drop down, and then you go off into the rest of the ride. At Disney World, you go in and you don't realize it, but the ceiling is going up, and when the door opens for you to go out of the elevator, you're at the exact same level that you were on before when you walked in. So you're not on an elevator, but you think you're going down, but it's actually the ceiling going up.
Yes,
In a number of cases, what you have are show buildings that are behind the scene. If you look at aerial pictures like Small World, you have the fanciful facade, but you go out and it's a building out there. So you can take people from one level to another, but you're just basically still above ground. There's nothing that's built below ground.
that kind of makes sense because when you look at the attractions, the buildings or facades look relatively small. And the
Yeah.
attractions take up a lot of real estate. So where are they? So we're either behind it or below ground.
Yeah, if when I worked there, if we do the second 5 years coming up, I actually rented a helicopter a few times and went out and took some aerial shots. And you see, again, Small World, tiny little facade, huge, big building behind it. Same thing, small, a haunted mansion. You got the mansion, but it's really neat, huge building behind it. All these buildings are carefully camouflaged with the berms around them, the trees around them and everything. And it's the same thing at Disneyland. When you drive, well, you can't do it now, the parking lot. When taking the tram over from the parking lot today, you can look through all the bamboo and everything and see the backs of some big buildings, and those are all the big show buildings.
You'd mentioned when they built Epcot, the soil was like a wet sponge. They couldn't build on it. Of all the hundreds of thousands of acres they own, how much is unbuildable because of soil conditions?
I don't know. I don't know how much of it. I just know that one particular area, because the guy was just chortling how he had discovered this thing. I don't know how much of the rest of it is physically unbuildable.
You imagine though you bought up all this acreage and find out most of it is unbuildable.
I think we knew some of it. I think we knew that we had to retain so much for water remediation.
Yeah.
And so there were water retention ponds, some that were natural. And if you wanted to build in a particular area, you had to move that same square footage somewhere else. And also the Florida water table is very shallow, unlike California. There's no building basements in Florida unless you have some massive construction.
Matter of fact, right now at Disney World, in the center of the parking lot, there's been a forest area for a long period of time. They are actually right now taking that area out, putting more parking in. And as Debbie mentioned, they have to go and say, okay, this was a certain amount of protected wetlands. Where are we going to go else on the property and make sure we have the same amount of trees and land and all the rest of that done? So that was all part of the whole process that they did, and they're still required to do that today.
Could I chime in as a native Floridian on that?
Yes.
I lived in, this is Mike speaking. I was living in St. Petersburg when Disney World opened in 1971. Didn't get over there right away, but I was there in the first few months. But the thing about Florida, as you all were mentioning, is you can't build on certain parts. It's all aquifers under there. And some of them are like football field sized, and some of them are connected to Georgia. Like somebody will lose their wedding ring in Georgia, and it'll end up in Florida.
Wow.
But anyway, so my experience was I saw Disney World first. We only saw Disneyland on TV, and it's impossible to gauge the size. So my frame of reference was Disney World Orlando. Then when we moved to LA and we went to Disneyland for the first time, we walked up and saw the castle and were shocked because it looked like a model of what we saw back in Florida. But here's the thing. We grew to like the scale of Disneyland better. And we have relatives that have visited us from Florida who go to Disney World a lot. And they say, you know what, we can get a lot more done at Disneyland than we could at Disney World because of the size.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I've been down in Florida, interviewed. Disney said, do you want the job? But we're going to move you to California. And I had never been to California. So they flew me out, interviewed at the studio, and then went down to Disneyland. And it was like, whoa, this is tiny. It was just so different that the buildings are shorter, the streets are narrower. But like you, I've grown, to view Disneyland as a much more intimate experience than Disney World. I mean, the massive the massive paved areas at Disney World, I like the more confined, and the trees and everything were bigger and more grown in at Disneyland too, which really helped. But the two totally different things. And of course, the people at Disney World always like to talk about, oh, Disneyland could fit in our parking lot, and we still have room for 1,000 cars or whatever the numbers were. So it's like, yeah, but Walt never walked down your street. So there's still friendly rivalry, of course, between the two. And you can imagine when Disneyland first, or Disney World, I'm sorry, I will correct myself, make sure that we make everybody happy. When Walt Disney World first opened, you can imagine there was tremendous competition for resources between the East and West Coast. So they had pulled all sorts of people. I mentioned earlier, like Wally Bogue had gone out to open at the Diamond Horseshoe Review. See, I do listen to what I'm told at times. But all the money was going off to Disney World for years and years, and a lot of the talent was going off to Disney World. So there's a lot of resentment between the Disneyland people that figured they made this company what it is, and these usurpers at Disney World. Well, luckily they moved enough people over time between the management ranks that people just became the Disney parks people as opposed to the Disneyland or the Disney World. But then, and Debbie or the other Imagineers on the call will know, of course, that the people that run the park absolutely hate the people that design the park, and the people that design the park hate the people that run the park, because everybody ruins all the designs and everybody doesn't design the rides right. And it's just the typical stuff that goes on. It's all a giant family, and people still get along and enjoy it over time. But yeah, you'd go down there and on a day off or something, if God forbid you'd wear a shirt or something that identified you as a studio employee. Oh my God, we don't give us enough money to do our jobs. You wear an Imagineering shirt. What were you thinking when you put this switch here? So it's funny feedback you get.
So
Rich Barnes.
go ahead.
I'm one of the people that were.
Sorry, Rich, your sound cut out.
There
you go.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
I worked there from 71 to 77 in Studio D, recording studio there in the tunnels off Dax. And one of my jobs was making all the tape spares, duplicating those as recording engineer. But we recorded the World Symphony Orchestra on 16 track 2-inch 12 track format. And Roy Disney came down to listen to this tape after the day or two after it had been recorded, and interested to hear him talking about that. But one of the other stories was one night, two drunks walked the beam from the Contemporary Hotel to the Poly Hotel. After the monorails had shut down, it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. And one of the interesting stories.
Do you know this from firsthand experience, or?
I was there when it happened. I didn't see it, but
you didn't do it.
I didn't know. It wasn't me. It was a guest in the park, but they walked the beam from the Contemporary Hotel all the way to the Poly Hotel as if there was nothing wrong with it.
When I worked at the Contemporary, it was astonishing just to read the security logs, thinking, how do people do these things that they do? I mean, they would steal like the little Pargo carts that we'd run around in. And then, security would notice a Pargo cart bobbing in the lake out off the marina. It's like, what were you doing? It's how they didn't hurt themselves more than they did was astonishing.
Yeah.
Now, you were down the tunnel in Studio D. The office I had down there was over Lou Compare down by the radio shop. Was that right near you guys?
Yeah, well, yeah, Studio D was right there by the sound shop. And,
yeah.
Yeah. And we backed into actually all the machines went into Dax Central. And we ran sound for the Bicentennial Parade. The sound for that parade came from Studio D every night.
Right.
That's where I sat by Lou Compare and John Jensen.
Yeah, John. Yeah, super guy. Yep. Yeah, I remember, having to walk through, and there were all the guys who were in the shop in front of them were all fixing all the walkie-talkies and everything else for the park. So, and I guess you could say their office was cozy. It was small. Everybody can imagine you build this park, and all of a sudden all these departments need space. Down in the tunnels, you did not have big offices. It was, it was cozy down there. Somebody posted this fantastic scenes of aerial parks where the aerial photos of the parks were closed. Oh, Tim O'Day. Oh, the comparison is oranges to oranges. Yeah, they were both orange groves, so I guess we got it. Any other memories people have, or questions or thoughts on the first 5 years?
Just one, and I don't mean to put her on the spot or anything, but you've got on your Zoom right now an Imagineer who had been with Imagineering for 50 years. Peggy Ferris joined us.
I see Peggy there, yeah. Peggy, any thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Well, I got a chance to see the Walt Disney World site in 1969.
Whoa.
They took 10 of us from Disneyland, ride operators and tour guides, to work on the press conference. So we stayed at the Ramada Inn in Ocoee, and we were there for about 2 weeks with Disney executives, and then Don Tatum and Roy Disney and Card Walker and all those guys came out for the press conference in Pine Hills. And we had a big circus tent in front of the hotel that was filled with a big model and artwork. And so for 3 days we hosted the press, we hosted Florida legislators, and then there was a day where we invited people we hoped would be participants. So there was a lot of, corporate participation. And Bill Evans was there. He took us on a tour of the tree farm. It was just fascinating to see that. And I took a look and thought, this is going to be amazing. And I want to be part of this project. So when I got back to Disneyland, I followed people around saying, what could I do? And I graduated from Cal State Fullerton in 70, and I was in Florida in March of 71 as a supervisor of guest activities in the hotel. And so my opening day experience was, we had an office in the Contemporary, and I had a small staff of guest activity hostesses at the Polynesian and the Contemporary. And one girl showed up and she'd forgotten her shoes. And so luckily we were the same size. I gave her my shoes, and then I had to just kind of pad around the office barefoot for the day. So I didn't get to see anything.
Yeah, we were on the 3rd floor of the Contemporary, or?
During the opening, we were all in the wings, and our office was what would be a hotel room. And then I'd say about 3 or 4 months after opening, you'll probably remember the big reorganization, and Disney had bought US Steel out of the hotel contract. And that sort of precipitated some reorganization. So my group was merged with Recreation, which reported to Kevin Donnelly and Bob Matheson. And suddenly there was a lot of redundancy. And since I knew nothing about beaches and pools and lifeguards and boats, I was transferred to convention sales, which reported to marketing. And I was there until I bumped into Marty Sklar in 76. And he said, well, I want to kick Epcot off with a series of conferences. And you're looking to come back to California. You know all about meetings and conventions. So why don't you join us back in California at Imagineering and help us get Epcot started? So I was at Walt Disney World for the first 5 years, 5.5 years. And it was great to see it all.
Oh, that's great.
Around.
I saw a picture somebody posted not long ago of a small little guard shack about the size that you see going into a parking lot, and it was the entrance to Disney World at the time. I mean, it's just a regular road, a little dirt road going off into the distance, and there's this guard shack. Maybe she's got a picture of it, and it's just, you look at it and go, it's hard to believe that was the genesis of this massive, multi-zillion dollar, world out there. And it's hard for me to think about who has the vision to figure out the castle is going to be here and not 7 feet to the left, and how this road's going to connect over there. And I mean, to me, if I was the guy designing it, the monorail tracks would meet, like that or something when they put it together.
No, it's true. It's amazing. Here's Admiral Fowler. He's driving a float boat at Bay Hill, and this was kind of our wrap party after everything had happened in 69.
Would you like to hear a funny story about Admiral Fowler and his float boat?
Of course.
I used to go to Disney World so often that they said, "Hey, would you like to stay at Bay Hill? You can stay in Dick Nunes's house when he's not using it." So I said, "Oh, that's great." And my boss would get mad because they'd stick him in some hotel at an International Drive. But we were down there. We decided to have a really big party. We had finished this big project, and let's go out and have a thing. So we got a couple cases of liquor, and we went out on the boat, had a great time, brought the boat back because there was a dock behind the house with 2 float boats. So we took one out, had a great time, brought it back, and we put in gas in it. And the guy at the gas pump said, Admiral Fowler doesn't usually let other people use his boat. Turned out the keys started both boats, and I had taken the wrong boat. And I was like, oh, goodness. What? So I figured I better let him know I had done it before somebody else let him know I'd done it. And he basically said, did you dent it? I said, no, it's fine. He goes, good enough. Click. That was the end of the call. But, oh, my heart was in my throat. I've just taken the Admiral's boat, drunk as a skunk out on the Bay Lake chain, for hours. And he's gonna be mad. Oh, I was scared to death.
Here's the picture of the guard shack
at
the entrance to the north-south road.
Yeah, it's again, imagining people just driving up and, that's where it's all going to be. So
yeah. Thank you, Debbie. It was fun to share this.
It was great seeing. I didn't realize that guard shack looked like that. That was amazing. Thanks, Peggy.
Yeah, it was absolutely nothing. I mean, I figured the poor guy had got to be out there, and how many people came by at the beginning, and I want to see Disney World. There's nothing to see. Go away. So, well, I have one more poll here. Let me see if I can bring this up. Poll. Let's see. Okay, so let's give this a try.
Bill, do you happen to have Epcot pictures as well, or does it kind of end with Disneyland and Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom?
No, I keep going every 5 years. I could keep going and doing. Now, I don't have as many pictures as Steve does, for example. I got some pictures of building Epcot, but if we could talk your husband into being a guest lecturer one time, I'd love to have more, because you guys were down there. I came down to visit during construction. You guys lived down during construction. So if you and Steve would like to be the guest lecturers some week, let me know and we can work that out.
Are you kidding? You also have to get Peggy and Melissa Roan Paris and Rich Barnes and Glenn Barker and Vince Carden, and if Brock Thoman's on, I mean, we all did it. So
yeah, for each of these things. Okay, here's the results. Hang on one second. Share results. So it looks like people want to do more Disney World. Well, I can certainly do that. And let's see. Okay. Boy, we strayed off from my original thing of World's Fairs a bit, but we can get back there. Yeah, like I said, I've got other topics to do. I'm just way super behind on a book that I got to get done. So doing Disney World next week would be easy because I don't have to do a lot of formatting. I've already got the pictures done. When I first started this, I figured, we'll go a month or two in the pandemic, everything will be done, we'll be back to it. Now it's like, well, what am I planning for year 5, But I'd love to have other folks like you or Rich or something. If you guys would love to be the guest presenters some week, I am absolutely enamored of hearing your stories or seeing your photos of it. And it's certainly easier than me anyway. So if folks would be interested in any particular time of doing it, just drop me a note and we'd love to hear from you on. And like I said, turn it over there. So stop sharing the results. Okay. So I will do Disney World the next 5 years, which is the first 5 years that they survived my working there and what I did to them. So it was a great time. Like I said, I was lucky. Hired a helicopter, things you can't do today because of flight regulations. So a couple different times hired helicopters, went and shot, climbed up to the top of the castle and took pictures of all sorts of places you can't go. So yeah, next year we can do Disney World the next 5 years. So we need somebody to scan Peggy's photos. Yeah, Peggy, where do you live these days?
Newport Beach.
Newport Beach. Okay. Well, if you need some help in getting them scanned, let me know. If we can certainly see if we can find a way to immortalize them for you.
Oh, great. Thank you. And while I'm on, Sally Judd, weren't you at Walt Disney World in those early days? You're on mute.
Yeah, I was a
Oh.
tour guide. In fact, that's when I first met Peggy.
That's right.
It helped with a convention or something over at the Contemporary Hotel. So yeah, I started in 1973, and I was a tour guide till about 74, and then left, and then started at Imagineering in 75.
Well, again, if you have things to show on future talks, just the early days just fascinate me. I mean, when you, again, how much they were able to do in that period of time is just astonishing to pull it all together. So I thank folks for joining, and hope nobody's facing any tornadoes or hurricanes right now, for unlike last week. So hopefully the weather continues to be good. Hopefully we go outside and we don't find any fires burning outside our house tonight, so or today. So appreciate
Thank you, Bill. Really love these. I'll have to view it later on, starting next week. But thanks a million.
Kendall's got to go back to work.
Yeah, God help me.
Rare thing these days. So stay healthy.
I hope it's going to be okay. Anyway.
Right. And again, for folks, you know, Rich or Peggy or Sally, anybody would like, and again, I see Steve's on there, but I don't see his picture. Go and beat him up, Debbie. And, you know, I just love when he shares some of his pictures online. Like I said, I was a visitor during construction. You guys live there. You can share about living out in your trailers and all the rest of it. So we'll when we get to Epcot the first 5 years, I'm going to twist your guys' arms and make sure you do it.
All right, Bill.
Okay, I've got to go. Take care. Take care.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you in a week.